Languages live. It's weird to say that, but just think about it. They change, many things stay the same, parts grow, parts go away. They're like humans, with their own personalities and quirks. After all, language is a human invention, but just like humans, languages die. It's a sad thing to have to say that. I remember seeing the amount of human languages at 7,139 alive languages per ethnologue, one of the greatest resources for every language, but now it's at least 7,137. With the death of a Christina Calder, the language of Yagan is dead forever. You can see how Yagan was spoken on Wikipedia, but it's just dead. And like with humans, no language has ever been revived successfully. Well, okay, there's one exception for both of these. Just like how Jesus was revived, so too was his language. Hebrew. Well, Jesus actually spoke Aramaic. Okay, it works better if we lie, so let's just go with that. Ah yes, the Jews. I've never seen a more discriminated against group of people in my life. In the United States. Huh, while recording that, I think I underestimated how racist people are. Like, oh, there goes 6 million Jews with this fucker killing a bunch, and oh, here's Karl Marx, a good friend of Abraham Lincoln, and Marx even supported the end of slavery in the United States. So he's probably not racist. Hopefully he didn't. Yikes! And surely there's no ill will towards Jewish people today. Oh god! I think this pretext is important to keep in mind. The Jewish people have had a pretty rough time ever since Jesus, existed. Conspiracy towards these people is so common that it's insane. Throughout the video I will be bringing these things up in a joking way, but don't worry, a Jewish man gave me permission to make jokes about Jews in this video, I think. And my ex, who brutally broke my heart in half after a year and a half, is Jewish. I harbor no ill will towards the Jewish people, because even though she shattered me and my soul, I know I'm not missing out on much. But that's not important. What is important is the language, and to be real, to talk about the history of the language, I have to talk about regular history too. And while I love history, I like learning about it more than I like talking about it. It's not as fun as looking at Aleph over here, you know? So, I have an idea. How about this? Everything I say about linguistics in the Hebrew language will be accurate, but everything I say about the history will just be a brief overview, and will be somewhat inaccurate, but it will be mainly accurate. This will go just fine, I think. Wait, what's the title of the video? This whole story starts in the year 1000 BC, with Moses and the Jews. Moses was doing fine in Egypt, which was one of the first civilizations ever, until he was told that this guy named Jesus was coming. He thought that was kinda bad, so he parted the Red Sea and forgot to close it, which is why the Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal. It wasn't because they were drawing dicks in the water, it was just that the empty space had got pushed into the canal. Whoopsies! Either way, eventually the Jews were like, well, we've avoided Jesus, hopefully he won't come to this land we're on now, whoever that guy is. I doubt he'll be born a Jew, hopefully there are no imposters among us. And then they started to do things like have a culture and make names for things. They decided unanimously to name the land that they were on Israel! Okay, well I guess they didn't, but hey, it's not like this will cause any problems, even today. Nope, here in Israel! Palestine. Okay, we'll just call this place Canaan as an attempt to stop fighting in the comments. Either way, here's where they built the first
big Jewish space laser.
Oh Jesus! Oh, no, as a matter of fact, somebody who doesn't think of him as the Messiah. This is Ace. Hello, Ace, or as they say in Hebrew, Salmon.
What? That's not how we...
He's a native Hebrew speaker, and is a resident of the area that is Canaan. He'll be helping us out with things in this video. Also, what did he mean by that? That sounds like such a random thing to say. Something that no sane human being would ever say. Let alone somebody holding a public office in the United States. I need to get the hell out of this country. Either way, after Moses built the big Jewish space laser, which main features were turning the frickin' frogs gay, killing Santa Claus, and starting wildfires or some stupid QAnon bullshit, Moses climbed to the top of these very tall stairs and yelled, "Hey yo, the pizza here!" before he fell down and broke every goddamn bone in his body.
My ears burn!
Dying was a tradition that Jews and people of other faiths loved doing back in the BCE. According to Ace,
well, it was written in the Torah that Moses said dying is pretty badass.
It was a great tradition for everybody at the time. People thought it was so cool to die that the Egyptians made pyramids for their kings because they died in cool ways. But then Thomas Paine wrote his book, We Should Have Pain, and people realized that things hurt, including dying. Eventually, people stopped liking dying. But then the Romans came along and threatened to make the Jews die, and they're like, we'd rather not. So the Romans were fine with that. And even when the Jews were mad at the Romans just made sure that the Jews could actually write in Latin. This was great, until all of a sudden, oh shit, it's that guy Moses was talking about, wasn't it, Ace?
The answer is yes to that question. I am not a recording, and this is a real...
Okay, so the Jews were like, what should we do? And the smartest among them, Judas Howerton, reportedly said,
This Jew's in for a ton of work.
Twitch's friends Charlius and MacDonaldius said,
You can't say things like that.
I don't know what I said. What did I
You
say?
dropped a hard J.
Either way, they shoved Jesus onto a cross, and everybody lived happily ever after. Until bigger Jesus came along. Tell us the story, Ace.
Well, the story of Bigger Jesus is a very interesting tale.
You said nothing of importance. Either way, bigger Jesus was like Jesus in every way. Except for the whole forgiving people for their sins thing and loving their neighbor. He was also 20 feet tall. He stomped on pretty much everybody he saw. He actually reportedly said, hate, whenever he saw a person who listened to Judas Howerton. And he eventually drove all the Jews out of Israel,
Palestine.
spreading them across the world. One day, he chased a Jewish man to a French beach, and fell into a super big hole. He would then spend nearly 2 millennia here, changing in looks and size from the bigger Jesus we know and love. This became important on June 6 of 1944, with the D-Day invasion, when the US decided to invade France for, being France. Little known fact that the United States was actually losing this battle when they invaded France, until all of a sudden they heard from the hole, it's Morbin time! And yes, bigger Jesus became Michael Morbius. He was able to single-handedly stop France from being France, and he is why we won World War II. He is now a celebrated figure in Jewish culture for his character arc in Breaking Bad, and his character arc from being a man who stomped on Jewish people to being somebody who ended up saving many of them. He would later die of getting the morbs. Either way, with the big diaspora created by Michael Morbius, caused by Michael Morbius, the Jews had spread from their homeland and began speaking different languages. Sad! But the important thing was that the Torah itself and other disciplines and literary items, despite the whole dying thing being out of fashion and suicide no longer being badass, were still important to the Jews. The Jews still followed the Torah. But because Google Translate didn't work, with the lack of Wi-Fi until its invention in 1997, they just decided to learn Hebrew to understand their religion. Either way, all was fine and dandy for the Jews until English became modernized. And you might be like, okay, why is that important? Well, that's because in the Torah, there was something that was said.
There was a little part of the Torah that everyone missed, and it said, please return to Jerusalem by 1948. So that was the main driving force behind Zionism, other than Biggest Jesus, of course.
Ah yes, and the part about Biggest Jesus sparked Zionism into full throttle. Apparently, in the Torah, it was also said that Biggest Jesus would probably come at about the same time. So the Jews were looking out for the Biggest Jesus, but, he never came.
Zionism started due to the idea of an even bigger Jesus coming to cause terror to the Jews in Europe. But Biggest Jesus never existed because he was made by Valve and they can't count to 3.
And then this guy who had one testicle said, the Jews are probably evil because my family doctor was Jewish and was a great guy and I thanked him a lot, but my mom died of a sickness, so that means that... Wait, maybe the Jews aren't so bad. Actually, I'm a coked out meth addict, so who cares about logic? Anyways, everybody was sick of his bullshit. So they went into Berlin and solved things with the centrist mindset, by understanding his side of the argument. Either way, the whole going back to Jerusalem thing sounded like a great idea after all the death and destruction, so the Jews decided, with the help of the Allies, to create a new nation in the area of Canaan, and there was never any border dispute ever on anything ever. Either way, that's the history part of the video done, so now I can go through the actually sourced linguistical topics. So Hebrew was revived with the rise of Zionism in the 1800s, and the Aliyah, which was essentially the act of Jews moving back to the Middle East. Some of the revival must be owed to Eliezer ben Yehuda, a man who decided to write a Hebrew newspaper in Jerusalem, called the Hazvi, and even raised the first native modern Hebrew speaker, Itamar ben Avi, which, whoa, it's crazy to think we know who the first native speaker of a language is, as usually the line between new and old languages makes it impossible to say who the first native speaker of any language is. Either way, when World War I was won by the British, they got a bit of land in the Middle East, namely Palestine. Hebrew was made an official language of the area, and was used by the Jewish population there. Over the next 30 years, the Jewish population conversed in Hebrew, and considering that most of them knew it, new native speakers were being brought up in these environments. When Israel was made into a state, Hebrew was made the official language, and Arabic was given a special status. And with these factors allowing for the Jews to end up back in Jerusalem, Hebrew was able to become a native language once more. But now, let's talk a bit about how Hebrew works. Firstly, the modern language is a bit different than when Hebrew died out. The language is comparable to Shakespearean English to modern English. It's possible for a native Hebrew speaker to understand Biblical Hebrew, but it's a bit more difficult. Also, the language is Semitic, meaning it is related to Arabic. I asked Ace how he'd compare Arabic and Hebrew, and to me it seems like comparing Romanian and Spanish. I asked Ace if he thought that sounded good, and this is the only thing he had to say. Either way, the Semitic family is very interesting. Hebrew uses a unique system for words. In English, the present tense write becomes the past tense wrote, and somebody who writes is a writer. Well, Hebrew does something similar, except they use these things called roots. Roots are composed of sounds, like KTV. This root is related to writing, so the third person male singular verb tense is just katav, meaning he writes, using KTV. But what if I wanted to make it future tense? Well, it would fall into this pattern, each number representing where you'd shove the root letters. So the future tense for third person male singular is yiktov. This would be the same for almost all of the roots. If you had any other root, you could shove it into this format to make the future tense for third person male singular. For nouns, it is a similar case. The words writing, script, and writer all come from the same KTV root. Kativa, kativ, and kotev. The way Hebrew works is incredibly interesting, not only for these roots, but word order. You can shove the words in pretty much any order and it will work, but there are preferred orders. Anyways, that's what I had to say for the language, but I know there is something you want to hear concerning Israel and Palestine. Okay, Ace, so what are your opinions on the geopolitical relations, the uncertain future, and the general controversy between Israel and Palestine?
What is Israel?
What? Like your country? The country you're from?
Yeah, I have no clue what you're talking about.
Okay, so it seems Ace was actually this mysterious goblin who didn't know anything about Hebrew, but everything about the history should be fine, as I have been fact-checking it with this book on Israel's history. Wait, it's upside down. And wait, it's a book about filmmaking by Kim Jong-il? I hope you like this differently paced video. Of course, it's not what I usually do, but I think it turned out well. Before I talk about my next video, I'd like to say I had a blast making this one. You could say I had an air blast. Oh god! Okay, well, I was gonna talk about the languages that the presidents speak next, but not only do I plan on doing a video different than linguistics every once in a while, I also have to talk about something more important, TF2. Now everybody has heard about the Save TF2 campaign as of late, and I have nothing to say about that other than good job guys. But I wanted to talk about how people have been neglecting one of Pyro's most powerful weapons, which isn't even a weapon. The thermal thruster, baby!